be here today again. Once more, we are hosting Dr. Barack. He's one of the people that have been hosting on our shows, and we'll be talking about what is happening in the country, matters, politics, and development matters in the country. And of course, currently he's the Secretary General of a particular party. He'll be telling us more about the party and the future aspirations of this country, of course, pertaining to their party. Dr. Barack.
You can just say Barack.
Barack.
Yeah, that's good enough. And I take note that while I was flattering myself with the thought that I was hosting you, you're hosting me, but I understand the platform.
Oh, the platform, yes, actually, I was talking about the platform, but thank you so much for hosting us at your home, that is. Yeah.
So, welcome, but I'm also very happy to be hosted. I also take note that you are shy about saying DNA, and yet DNA runs through our bloodstreams, all of us. So I'm the Secretary General of the Democratic National Alliance, a lot of which we are going to soon start hearing about. It's a party of ideas. It's not just a party of accumulating numbers. It's a party of processing and disseminating ideas, because the space that we occupy needs also to have ideas properly curated, properly canalized, and properly disseminated, so that people know where we are going. If we are to go beyond cosmetic changes of guard to more fundamental changes of system. So we come.
Why DNA? Like you literally changed it. The last time you introduced me, now you DNA. Why did you have to change the name?
Yeah, we told you that it was a USP, which was Umoja Summit Party, but it was in transit to becoming DNA, because we are talking about the DNA of the country, which must be reset to factory settings, must be restored to factory settings in order for us to get it right. We lost it from the very outset, and the country has gone through 62 years of loss of direction. That's why each time we are about to behold new changes, those changes frustrate us. We talk about changes that don't go beyond the moving on of certain individuals, and the coming on board of a new set of individuals. They get in the driver's seat and they carry on with the same wretchedness that those who have gone before them have been driving. And so we need to restore the DNA to the original hope that we can have a country that is just, that is free, that is fair, where we say that justice is our shield and defender, and we are focused on producing plenty within these our borders, that we are talking about the fruit of our labor and the glory of Kenya, filling every heart with thanksgiving. Those were not empty words. Those people who talked about the fruit of our labor and the glory of Kenya had processed the thoughts very clearly. They knew that there is always that potential for some people to try to reap where they have not sown, and to gather where they have not scattered, and that amounts to parasitism, it amounts to corruption, it amounts to theft, and people who become thieves become glorified because of the kind of wealth that they are flaunting. And the authors of Kenya's independence knew that glory should come out of the fruit of our labor, and hence those words being inscribed in our national anthem, so that we then pull together to build this, our nation. And how so beautiful the words of our national anthem ring, but which have been betrayed by successions of leadership in the country. And so we need to restore the DNA of the country to factory settings and start all over.
Thank you so much for that. The last time we had this conversation, rather with the time we hosted you on our show, I remember you talked about the archives of changes and that it will not stop, and it's like they're still gathering. And I'm so scared that you're becoming a prophet because, like, months later, the same thing is still happening, and the pit is still and there's a probability that this will not be the last protest. According to you, what is the take on the James protest?
You see, Violet, I'm not a prophet.
You're becoming one.
I'm a student and teacher of political science. If you want, and I don't like talking about that very much, dwelling in that space for too long, because I'm a doctor of philosophy in politics and international relations. And I've been given the power. When you are graduating, the chancellor says, I give you the power to read and to do all that are pertain to the degree which you have been given. Doctor of Philosophy and Political Science. That means I should be able to read political situations, but not just to read political situations, to continue reading about politics, about history, about international relations, and to study situations and tell you what is happening. If you want, you can listen and do something about it. If you don't want, you can dismiss. That's fine. What matters to me is that I have told you. I have passed the message. You've heard. What you do with it is up to you. The Gen Z revolution, because this is a revolution, it is not an uprising. An uprising or an insurrection is a momentary rebellion against the state of things, the state of affairs, and people retreat, and it is forgotten about. This is a revolution, and revolutions don't happen in one day. Revolutions happen over a period of time. That there is an accumulation of grievances, an accumulation of unhappiness over a number of years, sometimes over a number of decades. And some of the revolutions in world history, for example, the Russian revolutions of 1905 and eventually 1917, were accumulations of grievances that had lasted several centuries, to the point that when the Bolsheviks were taking over, overthrowing the Russian Tsarist regime in 1907, they were sparked off by what you'd call last straws. But the grievances had been there when the Bolsheviks overran everybody else and took over. The French Revolution of 1789-1792 was also an accumulation of centuries of unhappiness about the state of things in the country. And when the moment came, it rode on the force of spontaneity, and there was nothing to stop it. The American Revolution, 1776 to 1783, was an accumulation of centuries of unhappiness. The Mexican Revolution, 1910-1920, was also a response to an accumulation of factors over the decades. And you could talk about many more other revolutions. What we are witnessing in the country today is a factor of unhappiness with the system, systemic misrule, systemic betrayal that runs across a number of decades. In fact, we could even take it right back to the colonial context, back to 1895, where we would be talking about the partition, the establishment of the protectorate, and afterwards the establishment of the colony in the 1920s, and the unhappiness that our grandparents or great-grandparents experienced, and which was transferred into the independent Kenyan state that has not served the hopes and aspirations of the people that we talk of in the national anthem, which is the Kenyan dream. And so the young people that we are seeing in the streets who are saying that Ruto must go, they're not talking necessarily about William Ruto, the individual who is the president of the public. There's Ruto and there's Rutoism, and this Rutoism is systemic. It has been inherited across historical timelines. And you see, if you remove William Ruto today, the individual from Sugoi, and take him back to Sugoi, and you plant there another person, the system being what it is, Rutoism will carry on, and the youth will still be saying Ruto must go, or whoever is there must go, and the next one and the next. So this is what I mean when I say that there's a revolution in progress, and that the leadership is slipping in the middle of a revolution. That the young people have now broken through the tribal barriers. They have broken through the class barriers. They have broken through the religious divide. They are coming together as an aggrieved demographic that has got nothing to lose except its frustrations. Now, what do I mean by nothing to lose except its frustrations? 40 years ago and slightly more, I was a young student at the University of Nairobi. And we university students used every so often to burst into the streets of Nairobi over one disquiet or the other. And some or most of those disquiets pertained to misgovernance that we perceived to have been taking place in our country. And we would go out, carry placards, protest. We would say, down with imperialism, down with apartheid. We would say, jail the thieves. We would say, so and so must go. And we would go back to the campus. We would go back to the central catering unit. We would have food. Sometimes we complained also about that too. But we nursed the hope of the day when we would leave the university and we would go out and get into jobs. Basically, we dreamt of the day, whether we admitted it or not, when we would also join the system. And many joined the system. Some have now, as we speak, ascended up to the very top of that system. They were absorbed, and we became a part of the problem once we graduated. We melted into the problem and became part of the tissue of that problem. Today, you are dealing with millions of young people who are in the main already in the streets. If they have been to university, they have already come out, they've been disgorged. They are in the streets. And in the streets, they have not found the hopes that they had when they were university students. In fact, in recent years, there's been relatively less student unrest than there was in our time in the 1970s and in the 1980s. There's been less unrest because students have learned that the university education that they are enjoying is an escape route from poverty. But they have gotten out in the streets, because to be in the streets used to mean looking for a job. They say this person is in the streets, this person is tamarking. They are looking for a job. But they have found out that there are no more opportunities left in those streets because of the misrule that informs their country, that has informed their country over 62 years. So the people who are unfortunate to be in power today are dealing not with a system that, or rather with a resistance that can be contained with truncheons and with guns and with guns. They're dealing with a resistance that can only be sorted out by facing the facts squarely and dealing with them. If I were the person to advise William Ruto today, which fortunately I am not, but if I had the misfortune of being the person to advise him, and the misfortune because he most likely would not listen, and misfortune because I would be part of that system, if I were to be the person to be unfortunate enough to be advising President William Ruto, I would tell him that now you are the symbol of everything that has gone wrong with this country. It does not matter anymore who committed the original sin. And there are people there have been who committed the original sin. It was not you. But you are now the symbol. You are the custodian. You are the poster boy of everything that has gone wrong in this country. You are holding the tiger by the tail. And what you should be looking for is the possibility of doing the little that you can towards reform, because it cannot be done within the period that you have. And you only seem to have 2 years. If you are lucky, you will have 7 years. But if you have 7 years, Mr. President, and you continue on the path and in the direction that you have taken, you will not reach the end of the 7 years. The bustling, youthful energy and appetite for change is insurmountable, and you have chosen the wrong methods. You will not crack these skulls open to the point of subduing them. You will not ring-fence yourself with a razor wire successfully. Many tried before you. Unfortunately, you are not a student of history. You don't like history. And many have taken the path that you are on today, and it has not happened. So the best things for you to do are two. Number one, listen to these people to the best of your ability. Do some of the things that they are asking for. But they will still reject you. You will be like the Russian monarch who was called Nicholas II, the Tsar Nicholas II. They even called him Tsar the Reformist, because he attempted to reform the Russian Tsarist system, to abolish serfdom, to give the serfs and other slaves a measure of relief from the agonies that they had suffered over years, over centuries, but it did not work, did not serve him because they had gone too far. So the second thing you need to do is to plan. Let me not lose that thought. Is to plan to dock this ship in a peaceful harbor in 2027 and find a way of exiting, because that space cannot continue.
So, are you by any chance saying that even if President William Ruto does literally everything that the Gen Zs are calling, there is no escape?
First, he does not have the time, so he will not be able to do it. He does not have the time. The reforms that this country needs are going to take something like 10 years at the very minimum. And they are going to require a president who has got both the capacity and the inclination. William Ruto lacks both the capacity and the inclination. He lacks both the ability and the proclivity. He doesn't have that bent. But even if perchance he had, the seed of doubt has been planted in the national memory. They look at him and say, we cannot trust this person. And it's because he comes and promises outrageous things, outlandish things that cannot be realized. He will come and tell Kenyans that building Premier League kinds of stadiums, that after Christmas when you come, you will see them. He will say that we have now converted Gorogocho into London, and people can see there's nothing like that. He will say things like you are going to drive cars without engines within the next, I don't know how many months, and nothing like that is happening. So people start doubting him. But they're also looking at the way he's been cracking people's heads open. They're looking at the brains that have been blown up in the streets of Nairobi and other towns. They are looking at the goons who have now been introduced into the streets to try and rescue the system. So people have lost faith in him, and you need a trusting population before you can undertake any meaningful reforms. He does not have that trusting population anymore. It was there in 2003 at the start. But by mid-2003, with the taxation, with the cost of living, with the levels of corruption, with the opaque deals, you look at the SHA system, we don't know who the private entities in it really are, who are the individuals behind it. You look at the affordable housing, we don't know the finer granular details that we need to know. The transparency is not there. So when you put all those together, he lacks a goodwill from the public, and they want him to go. And this thing of Ruto must go is not just an empty mantra of Ruto must go. Ruto will go. And how he goes is the big question. How does he go? He can navigate and pilot his own exit by responding to the constitutional dictates of how a president gloriously and in a dignified fashion exits. Or he can dig in and risk living ignominiously. The choice is up to him. In terms of reform, there are people who have tested a measure of liberty. Social science, liberal philosophy teaches us that. That people who have tested a measure of reform, a measure of liberty, will crave for more, and you cannot push them back. And when you come up with cosmetic, piecemeal attempts at reform, you only sharpen their appetite for more of the reform. In no time, they get completely fed up and they push you over the cliff. That is where President William Ruto is. Unfortunately, he keeps on saying things like, why should we teach history? That we should not fund history. The solution to the issues that are eating him up reposes in proper knowledge of history and the streams that revolutions have followed in world history, and the knowledge that his country is now on that path, and that the piecemeal cosmetic reforms he may attempt to engage in will cast him in the place in which Nicholas II found himself in the first quarter of the 20th century.
Saying that Ruto will go, then it only means it's a matter of time. But again, do you think that all these the protests that you're talking about, and I'll still ask you about the UNCENSORED, but the protest that you're talking about is putting him in a very precarious position. But now you've had the years exchange between the opposition and also the government. There's actually blame game. You hire the things, you hire the things. Where is that?
You see, the goons are clearly brought in by the government. Let's be very clear about that. They are brought in by the state. And it is a foolish ploy because it backfires. Anyone who has eyes that see, without even needing to think very hard, a commonsensical thing, can see these fellows getting into town, carrying truncheons on a day when there's a demonstration that is supposed to be peaceful. You're not supposed to be carrying those truncheons. And they are festooned and chaperoned by the Kenya police. And the Kenya police are wearing not just regular attire, they are dressed up in combat attire, and they are equipped with allied paraphernalia that goes with combat. And they are walking on, festooning and chaperoning these goons. And they are watching, they are looking on as these characters are breaking showroom glass windows. They are doing nothing. But when they see youngsters coming and shouting and screaming, both at them and at the goons, they are clobbering them. They are cocking their canisters and unleashing. How dense do we need to be in the head not to join the dots and see that these are state-owned and state-sponsored goons? His Excellency the President and people around him should give us a measure of intelligence, credit us with a measure of intelligence that we can see through these things. Now, if you get to a point where you have descended to the level of trusting not your regular police service or police force, as this one is anyway, to be the one to secure your government in power, that you have now resorted to the Kenyan equivalent of the Haitian Tonton Makut that were put in place by Francois Duvalier when he came to power in 1957, and he saw that the state was becoming threatened, endangered all the time. 2 years later, in 1959, he invented the Tonton Makut, who have sunk the country to where it is today. The parallelisms are very interesting. 1957, 1959, 2 years. William Ruto takes over in 2022, really effectively, we can say is Kenya being on the railroad properly 2023. 2025, we have the Kenyan Tonton Makuts in the streets. Who are his role models? And that here is a president who takes a detachment of the police, the Kenya police, to Haiti, to Port-au-Prince, apparently to contain the goons. But at the same time, introduces goons in the streets of his capital, Nairobi, and sends the Kenya police to escort the goons. So it's a ridiculous place to be, but it speaks to a regime that is then in a taciturn manner, quietly, silently, accepting that it has failed.
So are you by any concern? Because again, they're the same groups that were allegedly, suspected in vandalism, also, whatever happened in police station, burning the police station and the courts and all that. So are you by any sense saying that the same groups hired by the government are the ones that did that? Or we still have another set of groups?
No, it's the same characters. They are sent that way, and the psychology is very simple. I don't even need to be a psychologist, but the psychology of it is very simple, that you are trying to send the message out to the wider public and to the business community and peace-loving citizens that these mandamanos are bad, because these mandamanos are leading to vandalism, they are leading to destruction of property, they are leading to a collapse of law and order. It does not require too much thinking to see that these things are happening in Kikuyu. I'm not saying in Kikuyu land. They're happening in Kikuyu. And then we remember what leadership from that space predicted that these things were going to happen. Where do you get all the time in the world to set a police station on fire, burn it, and police vehicles on fire? And the provincial, let's call it the provincial administration offices on fire. Where do you get all the time? It is all orchestrated. It is a clear script, a choreograph that wants the citizens to look at the mandamanos as bad, and therefore to be repelled by any mention of mandamano, and to feel that there are people who are associated with those mandamano and who are the opposition, and that they are bad people, they are bad for the country. That thing backfires, because why aren't you arresting these people? Why aren't you taking them to court? They're not going to arrest them. They're not going to take them to any court, because they are their own hirelings. And when push comes to shove, they will make confessions and talk about who hired them. If you flip that coin to the other side and talk about business, the business community and the economy, if we were to assume, if we must assume, only for the sake of argument, and I say only for the sake of argument, that these were indeed Gen Zs who are burning the stations, who are carrying out that vandalism only for the sake of argument. You cannot tell those kinds of people about the economy, because it's an economy out of which they are already shut. They are not part of that economy. They don't understand what you are talking about. Even the goons that you are hiring anyway, they are locked outside that economy. So when you say you are destroying business, they would be asking, for the sake of argument, whose business? Whose economy? Are we part of this economy? And revolutions quite often come in place to bring down the economy. The Haitian Revolution in 1795, there was a revolution in Haiti, which was an accumulation of years of grievances by the black slaves, whom C.L.R. James calls the Black Jacobins. And I invite everyone to go and read the Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James. The Haiti economy at that time was one of the wealthiest economies in the world. In fact, every European power wanted to own Haiti, which was a French colony. And they thought that they were seeing an opportunity to own Haiti because the French monarchy was in collapse. France itself was caving down to the revolution of 1789-1792 under the Jacobins. In France, you remember, we had the Jacobins and the Girondins. And the Jacobins were bringing down the Bourbon dynasty of France. And the rest of Europe was seeing an opportunity to own the rich colony that was Haiti and San Domingo. And you have seen that on the other side of that island is the Dominican Republic. That very rich island had some of the poorest people in the world. What George Orwell talks about in Animal Farm, where he says it looked like the farm had grown progressively very rich without the animals themselves being rich. So you can talk about an economy that is thriving, that is doing extremely well, but it is in the hands of an oligarchy. An oligarchy is a set of very few people who are extremely wealthy and who are in power. And many times an oligarchy is also concurrently a kleptocracy. That is a regime that is under thieves. And a kleptocracy can also concurrently be a kakistocracy. A kakistocracy is a regime that is in the hands of the worst elements of the citizenry. And so the majority who are locked out do not understand what you are talking about when you say the economy. And they will bring it down.
With that, of course, when talking about loans and all that, what would be your take on more comments, remarks? The other day he said something else, but now he came back saying, I did not say that, I said something different.
He's a confused gentleman, a young man, and I call him a young man deliberately and rightly so, because when I first participated in Mandamano in the streets of Nairobi on the 5th of October 1979 as a fresh undergraduate student, Murkomen had just been born 6 months earlier. 6 months earlier on the 12th of March 1979 in a forest near Eldoret. And so he didn't know that there was a maandamano happening. Even in 1982, when we went through the unfortunate events of the coup attempt, he didn't know that there was something happening that got to be called a coup attempt. So he.
Where he was born doesn't have anything to do with it.
Where you are born is also important, because even today there are 3-year-olds who have some idea that some things are happening in the country. They may not be clear in their minds, but in his particular case, in a forest, he didn't know what was happening. And if you doubt, go and ask him. If he's honest, he will tell you. But that is not for us to sidestep the point. The point is this, that even at that time, the people who are in power told us that there would be no more maandamano in the country again. They were saying that what has happened will not happen again. And that time we were protesting because there are elections in the offing. Elections that took place on the 8th of November 1979. In those elections, we had woken up to a newspaper headline that read, Anyona and ex-KPU bad. There was only one political party in the country, which was KANU. And for you to participate in an election as a contestant, the party had to clear you. And the party refused to clear George Anyona, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, and all other ex-KPU people who had been progressively released from detention. I've not mentioned how they were detained, never mind. But in truth, all these people served in detention without trial between 1969 and 1978. October 1969 to December 1978. So as university students who flattered ourselves with the thought that we were progressives, we went into the streets to say that they should be allowed to contest. We also went into the streets to demand. I remember Rumba Kinotia outside the Nation House on Tomboya Street on a Kenya Charity sweepstakes, a stand that had been capsized and made into a makeshift platform, addressing the journalists from Nation House and who are clicking away with their cameras. Rumba Kinotia telling them, comrades of the press, we demand that Comrade Ngugi wa Thiong'o, we are not asking, we demand that Comrade Ngugi wa Thiong'o be reinstated in his job in the Department of Literature at the University of Nairobi. We demand that Comrade George Anyona be allowed to contest, and Comrade Jaramogi Oginga, they were our comrades because we saw that we were progressives. And we were told never again would there be demos. And the demos continued to be there. And soon we were being told that they would shoot to kill. Attorney General Charles Njonjo issued an order to shoot to kill. But that did not end demos. Today, 40-something years later, we are hearing this thing being said by those who were born the year that we went out to demonstrate, and they are more than 40 years old. And this is where the relevance, the wider relevance of what you are asking me about where and when they were born, not being significant, comes in. That you are echoing today, you are sounding like a sound chamber of the people who tyrannized us at the prime of our youth in the 70s, that those who are born many years after the tyrants of yesteryear are now the new tyrants, and they're telling us it will not happen. That Kithure Kindiki, who was 7 years old in 1979, is now telling us that we will not tell you what we are going to do. Don't ask what we are going to do. We were told those things in the 70s and early 80s of don't ask what we are going to do. So he has said it. And if he has bitten his tongue, he should just come out and apologize. It's more honorable to apologize. In 1979, there were no mobile cell phones in the country. We could not capture you. These days, there's citizen journalism everywhere, and everything you say is being captured, and sometimes not just being captured, it's being transmitted live. Come out and apologize. For President William Ruto, you don't need a juvenile cabinet. It is a juvenile cabinet with juvenile delinquents who don't know what they are doing, who are telling the police to shoot to kill. And you have seen that some police officers are coming out in the open and they are saying, no, we cannot shoot to kill. We will try our best to stay within the law and to arrest. So, Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, apologize. And Your Excellency, Dr. William Ruto, apologize also. And then appoint a mature person to the Ministry of Interior. Have Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen as one more of your economic advisors, marking time, earning a salary, paying his debts. But removing from that docket is going to take you down faster than you imagine.
During that time, the one that talked about the Charles Yondo incident, or whatever it matters, we have like people who passed on who died during that time.
I do not recall us being shot to death in the streets as such. We also have one big riddle that has remained unresolved and addressed up to now, that during the 1982 fracas, a busload of students was claimed to have been showered with bullets, and they are thought to have died. I'm not very sure about that. It's something that needs to be investigated. You are aware that we are afraid of the truth, and that our March 2013 TJRC report, 2,210 pages, telling us about historical injustices, is rotting in Parliament. It needed to have been implemented. That would help bring out some of those truths. Be that as it may, there are people like Titus Adimosi, who was arrested at that time and who died in jail. Be that as it may, it's also recalled that in those early 80s, there are lots of people who died around Nyayo House. The reports used to say that they had committed suicide. These stories of prisoners committing suicide are not new. In the early 80s, we used to wonder why people were going to Nyayo House and jumping down. Some people even used to talk about it and saying, oh, this one is about to go to narrow house to jump down to die. It turns out that those people were killed in those death dungeons, and then their bodies flung out of Nyayo House. So as Albert Camus would say, to kill is to kill. Whether you kill with a gun, or you kill with bludgeoning, or you kill with strangulation, to kill. So through that analytical part, there are people who are killed. But has that stopped agitation? It hasn't. Agitation will go on until such a day as there is a systemic change. And systemic change, I need to repeat for purposes of empathy, is not about the removal of William Kipchirchir, Arap Samoei, Arap Ruto. That one is just the current custodian of that system. It is a fundamental change that shifts away from all the theft, all the bribery, from the goonhood and gunhood that puts in place proper use of our taxes, rationalizes our taxes, that addresses the cost of living, that restores education, that restores the healthcare system, that restores our roads, that restores our agriculture, that restores human dignity, that above all, in a secure environment, creates jobs and generates wealth that takes us back to the creed and promise of the Kenyan national anthem. If that is not done, even those who will take over after President William Ruto, let them be warned in advance that Kenyans are going to demand that they go. Even the next president and the next and the one after and the one after, if they are not going to get it right, Kenyans are going to agitate. And one of them might be the unfortunate one who will be driven all the way to the Indian Ocean. So we would have President William Ruto understand that, Mr. President, this is not about you, it's about the system. And even after you, we are likely to be still saying the same things. We used to say Moi must go, and Moi went. But we are still saying the same things because we did not address the system.
Looking at all of these things, do you think that President William Ruto has actually lost the and maybe that I will the other day he was kind of about to say that he's not going to hand over, power to
whether they have agenda or not is immaterial. The handing over of power is not anyone individual's prerogative. It falls outside his ken. It's not one of the things about which he can make a decision. He could in fact be arrested. For treason, no, not for saying that. For refusing to hand over power. Perish the thought, because it's not one of his cases. Once a proper election has been conducted and we have lost that election, he should come and hand over the instrument. But in any case, even if he doesn't hand over the instrument, the transition will go on because the law talks about the installation of the new president and the new deputy president. And nowhere do they say that we must hand over these things. These are not the things that people used to fight over in the kingdom of Mwane Motapa or the Kazembe kingdom, where you say this is the person who is holding the royal spear and the royal drums. That is, the royal drums of the Nabongo have not been handed over. That this person is the one who is carrying Omukasa. And since he's the one carrying Omukasa, he still continues to be there. No, there's something Waswahili wanasema wengi wake na usipowapa watajichukulia. So he doesn't have that. Has he lost legitimacy? No, he hasn't lost legitimacy. Legitimacy is in the constitution. By the same token that he cannot overstay his time when it comes to an end, by that same token, he also cannot lose his legitimacy by the things he's doing. But he has lost the moral authority to continue being in office because of perception of betrayal by those who voted for him, by those who campaigned for him, by those who gave him the benefit of doubt at the start of his tenure. The moral high ground is lost. And that is something he must think about each time he looks in the mirror to see whether his necktie is properly adjusted. He should remember that this person I'm seeing in the mirror has lost the moral authority. The legitimacy may be there, but the moral authority is lost. It was a mere formation of words that vaporized the moment they left his lips. Meaningless words that turned into water vapor and disappeared into the elements the moment they left his lips. So you need to just look at what has happened since that time. How many deaths we have seen, how many arrests, false arrests there have been, and you will know that he ain't managed. He does not have the ability or the proclivity to be apologetic. Remorse is the child of a contrite heart. But there's contrition. And contrition is about inner dialogue with your soul. And the soul advises itself and advises you that you have gone astray, that you have faith. But then you come out in true penitence. And out of penitence, you receive forgiveness. And you must mention the things you have committed by name, because things are known by first and name. But you cannot come and start uttering verbal conjunctives and saying things like, if I have wronged you. It's not a conditional phrase affair. It's an indicative phrase affair where you say, I have done this and I have done that. And I repent and I seek forgiveness from you, my brothers and sisters, and from God. Actually, it's a terrible historical accident that should never have happened in the trade union movement in this country. He lacked the intellectual depth and sophistication to understand even the labor concerns that he should be addressing. When Kenyans are differing in the streets, when Kenyans are wallowing in poverty, workers, others in a state of joblessness, which are the things he should be addressing? He spends a lot of time bargaining for those in power. He has become their puppet, successively their puppet. And he turns his court with amazing ease from this custodian to the next custodian. We should know that they are Gen Z, who are senior Gen Z, because to be a Gen Z, you don't have to be measured through what you would call chronological metrics. To be Gen Z, you will be measured through your ideological orientation, which means that there are young people within that chronological docket, young people who were born between 1987 and 2010-2012, who may not qualify for ideological purposes to be called Gen Z. We are seeing some of them being bought by the system, including some whom we saw in the streets, clad in three-piece suits, 4 pieces in the pocket, and 6 and 6 pieces on their lapels. We have seen them being procured by the state. We have seen some of them clad in counter suits, gravitating across the country, ostensibly telling us about which projects had gone proper. But we have seen them being procured by the state. So, a certain age, certain demographic is not going to define who is Gen Z and who is not. The persons who are Gen Z are going to be defined by their ideological orientation. Progressives, free thinkers, supporters of liberal democracy, human rights, equity, fairness, justice, those are Gen Z. And CJ Emeriti, David Maraga, is a senior Gen Z.
What is the feeling of Gen Z, Barrack?
You know, Gen Z, I have told you
What
that
you
you are senior Gen Z. And please understand that I probably have better grasp of the notion of categorization of people's in age demographics than a lot of people do. That they talk about people who were born between 1928 and 1945 as the silent generation, because their voices have not been known to have been heard over anything. And then there are the baby boomers who were born between 1946 and 1955. They are baby boomers 1. And they're called baby boomers because when the war ended in 1945, the soldiers returned home and there was a lot of idle capacity, and so they engaged in the processes that produced people, and there was a baby boom within that period, and so the Americans referred to those people as the baby boomers. Then they also discovered that it was continuing between 1956 and 1965, so they said, oh, these are baby boom second generation. Then the fellows who were born from 1965 to 1976 were called Generation X, meaning X boom. Okay? They are called X boom. Then there are fellows who are born between 1976 and 1987, who were then called millennials, because we were starting to move towards a new millennium. But as this was happening, the digital economy was now beginning to pick up. The digital technology was beginning to pick up, and there were people who were born between 1987 and 2010, 2012, the Zoom generation, because they were Zoomers, zooming in and out in the digital technology. So they are called the Gen Zs, Generation Z. That is chronologically, demographically. But
So Z
as
is for
often, yes, for Zoom.
okay.
Yeah, that's why they are called Gen Zs. But beyond that, we know that certain appellations start assuming new significance. People who have studied historical and comparative linguistics will tell you about the notional change of reference and reference. So in this case, it assumes an ideological dimension that people who are free thinkers, people who are votaries of good governance, of democracy, of human rights, of responsibility and accountability in government, they become Gen Zs after our Gen Zs who exploded in the streets of Nairobi and elsewhere in the country in June, July last year. So, I restate Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga is a senior Gen Z, and let Francis Atwoli understand that.
So, we're talking about the 2010 Constitution, and there's a whole lot of things that have been happening. What is your take on our Constitution currently and the way the current regime is handling everything?
It's a very powerful constitution, a very progressive constitution. It has been tested in many ways, and it has indicated that it has got the vigor, the stamina, the power of stay. This is the one constitution that was hailed in 2010 as the most progressive constitution in the world. And it is demonstrating that it is. This constitution has impeached 3 governors, completely sent them home. This constitution has jailed a former governor. This constitution has nullified the election of a sitting president. This constitution has impeached a sitting president. Never mind the flaws here and there that it did. This constitution has sent home 2 deputy chief justices. There are very few things left that this constitution has not done. One of them is to impeach a sitting president, and someday it's going to. The other thing it has not done is to jail a member of the cabinet. And we know how the cabinet is defined in the constitution. And the day is not very far when this constitution is going to jail a member of the cabinet. If I were to advise the high and mighty of this country, I would tell them, beware the constitution. And don't even attempt to tamper with it. It will mess you up.
Wow. Where does everything that is happening, talk about whatever is happening in Ruto's regime, whatever is happening, of course, on the streets and all that, where does this place
Raila Odinga has already been placed. Ruto has placed him in a cage. And from that cage, he can only equivocate and prevaricate. He can only make discordant sounds that lack wider relevance and significance in the civic activities in the country. Raila Odinga got into a pact with William Ruto. And I suspect that within that pact, forget about the 10 points, in that pact that they got into, which they hide somewhere in some cabinet, Raila Odinga was told, we will do this, and we'll do this, and we'll do that, and this. And he was probably even audio recorded, the way you are recording me here. And that has been kept somewhere. And he was told, sign here. And he was told, the day you jump ship is the day we will bring this out to the public. So that, like Samson in the Bible, we will go down together. And so Raila Odinga sits in a cage. Not like these birds of mine that are free here singing, but like a caged bird. And not a caged bird like that Mayo Angelo was talking about, why the caged bird sings, but as a parakeet. The parakeet is owned by the parakeeter, and it listens to the things that the owner says, and it will come out and repeat those things that the owner has been saying. Remember R.L. Stevenson's Treasure Island? There's a man called Long John Silver who carries a parakeet on his shoulder. And when Long John Silver and the buccaneers in Treasure Island, the hoodlums in Treasure Island, when they say 15 men, yo ho ho, with a bottle of rum, yo ho ho, on a dead man's casket, yo ho ho, the parakeet also repeats, says watu 15, yo ho ho, juu ya kasha la mfu, yo ho ho, na chupa ya mvinyo, yo ho ho. That is where Raila Odinga is.
You think he regrets?
On Long John Silver's shoulder.
I think he regrets the decision of joining the parliament party.
I don't know what he was given. I don't know. It depends on what he was given. But he's caged. Properly caged. And he's dragged a few people around with him. And we hear a lot of parakeets from ODM. We hear parakeets from Homa Bay. We hear parakeets from Siaya here in the neighborhood. Now after here, Manyudi, the next place is called Shatsala. And after Shatsala, you go to a place called Mudiero. We hear parakeets from Mudiero. We hear parakeets from Homa Bay. Another parakeet from somewhere there, Gori there, the parakeets. We hear parakeets from Suna. We hear parakeets from Mwambao. We even hear parakeets from Kakamega here.
But do you think he's playing safe? Do you think he's playing safe? Because, I mean, people say like there is division in ODM. But again, I don't know if it is actually a division per se, because the SG might say something that is actually contrary to people's thinking or whatever they believe that is what ODM stands. But again, Raila says nothing. So do you think he's playing safe in and out?
As I said, he's caged.
Yes.
As Mr. Odinga, he's caged. And there's very little he can say that he believes in. But I said he equivocates. Equivocates. To equivocate ni kusema mambo ni kama unasema mengine yanavuta huku na mengine yanavuta kule. He's equivocating. He sounds like the old Odinga, and he also sounds like a new Odinga, equivocating. And he's equivocating because he is in a cage. There is a pact. He's like the mythical Faustin, whom we read of in ancient antiquity. That this Faustin sold his soul to the devil. And having sold his soul to the devil, he could no longer enjoy the freedoms of thought, of speech, and of action that he previously enjoyed. So, Mr. Odinga is tied up in a Faustinian knot. It's very difficult for him to get out of it. And you asked, you think he regrets? Deep down, I think he regrets. He wishes he had not got into that pact. He wishes that he could now be traversing the streets with the Gen Zs, that he probably would have by now gone past those razor blade wires and beyond, and that he would be sitting pretty somewhere. So I think he regrets. I heard him the other day speak in a historical, habitual tense. Historical, habitual tense. Used to. We used to. Tulikuwa tuki. We used to. Sisi tulikuwa tukifanya maandamano. We didn't say sisi huandamana. Sisi tulikuwa tukiandamana. We used to demonstrate. It means that he appreciates the reality and is coming to terms with the reality that he steadily begins to belong to the country's historical context. And what an ignoble and ignominious way to bring that curtain down. He probably still has a little chance. He could throw overboard everything that they have agreed upon with William Ruto. Come out and tell Kenyans, we went there to try and help this man because in our considered view, the country was sitting in a bad place, and we thought that he had learned his lessons. We thought we could get there and redeem him and redeem that space and redeem the country. But we have now established beyond doubt that he has got neither the proclivity nor the ability. He lacks the will or the know-how, and is completely incapable of absorbing any new ideas and thought. He's completely impervious to ideas and thoughts that could help him. He is totally imporous when it comes to receiving and absorbing wisdom. And because of that, we now completely abandon him to his own whims, to his own designs, to his own devices, and to his own doom. And I'm calling upon all the experts that I gave him to pack up and leave. But if any of them have been enticed by the sweeteners around him, we also surrender them to their own designs, devices, and damnation.
I don't know if that will be possible anyway, but as you say, it's a point from the start. So we've seen a lot of people who are not supporting the government. The same reasons. Government counting. And probably one was Natembeya. Natembeya was something very different from the he was criticizing the government of over been there, we had a Mississippi and all that. Let me leave alone even Matembea. Just the other day during the Denzel protest, Maraga was part of those people. Then the next thing, the security has been gone. So, do you think that the government is actually intimidating those people with, different good side of the government?
Those are cowardly things to do.
But that is what is happening.
Yes. They are cowardly nonetheless, aren't they? They are the tricks of bullies. Bully beef. That is bully beef and his tactics, that we will bully you, we will intimidate you, we will harass you, we will blackmail you, we will harangue you and badger you until such a time as you surrender. But it's a government, a regime that is in panic. Don't do that kind of whistling in the dark, that kind of creation of straw men and fighting them. You allow liberal democracy to think, what is the worst that could happen to President Ruto if he allowed the oxygen of democracy to circulate? What is the worst that could happen to him? The worst that could happen to him is that he could lose the next election. But he is not welded into that office. He is not diffused into office that the separation of the two would be injurious to him. You lose the election, you go home and carry on with your life. You keep on asking, you hear them asking that, so where should he go? Where did he come from? He came from somewhere. Yeah,
and how do you want me to go?
It is written there clearly in the Constitution how to go. You can go by losing an election. You can go by resigning. You can go through the citizens initiating democratic processes that remove you in the middle of term. And you could also surrender to natural attrition, which could cause you to also go. I don't want him to surrender to natural attrition. Because that would be a sad moment for the country. Remember, Vio, I have told you repeatedly that this is not about William, the individual. Although sometimes the disengagement, the separation between William, the individual, and the president is difficult to fathom. But it's about this individual who is in office. And nobody says he must be there forever, or even that tomorrow he must still be there. If the kitchen is getting too hot, get out. Get out of that kitchen. And let someone else try.
When we're talking about the system, it is not about just William Ruto, but the system. And this system has been there, as you see, from the previous regimes and all that. Well, even like we get to see what is happening right now. It's like yesterday, Wetangula was saying, regarding William Ruto harshly.
Forget about Moses Wetangula. I went to school with him, and I will spare him.
Why would you spare?
Let me spare Moses Wetangula. I went to school with him. I was with him at the University of Nairobi, and he understands. I would only caution him that, Moses, we don't want to undress you. That Moses was one of these conservatives. When we said we flattered ourselves with the thought that we were progressive, Moses Wetangula was not one of us. So let me spare him. Moses, I will spare you.
You don't want to undress him?
I don't undress you. You are my vakoki. Yeah? He's my vakoki. And those who don't know what vakoki is, they should go and ask Kavaluya people what vakoki is. So Moses Weta is my vakoki. We are not judging William Ruto harshly. We are judging him by the standards that he proclaimed in 2022. And I was there, helping to show that this is how to navigate within those spaces. And of course, when we saw that that was not the direction it was going, we requested to be disengaged. And we were disengaged so that we can sit here and talk robustly about the country having lost direction because of the captain who is there. And when we talk about the system, let us start from the constitution. Do we have a good constitution? Yes, we have a good constitution. So what is wrong? What is wrong is that the person who is at the very top now talking about that individual in that office does not believe in the constitution and constitutionalism. And so he creates a parallel system to the constitutional system and constitutional order. And therefore we end up in the quagmire that we discover ourselves in today. The day we have the right head on that body, we will have a systemic change. That person will then start guiding us through the constitutional corridors and the constitutional paths that have been established. So we are not judging Ruto harshly. Ruto said there will be no more abductions. There are abductions. He said, under my watch, there will be no abductions. There will be no extrajudicial killing. Those were standards, Moses, that were set by William. They were not set by ourselves. That William, because at that time he was William, he was not President Ruto. William cut across this country. He went to 47 counties and signed accords with each county, promising certain deliverables. Those accords that he signed are the templates within which Kenyans are judging him. That he said he would bring down taxation. That he said the cost of living would come down. That he said his deputy would not be treated the way he had been treated. That he said Kenyans would breathe the oxygen of freedom and democracy. They are not breathing that oxygen of freedom and democracy. That education will be affordable. It is not affordable. That healthcare would be affordable. It is not affordable. Those were his own self-set standards. William Ruto was like a student who sets his own exam, who prepares his own marking scheme, and then he goes on to fail the exam.
What would you think on political future of Wetangula, as much as you say they want to address it, but now this is a bit different. His political future, Wetangula and
You know, Violet, those two gentlemen are my friends. And you put me in a very difficult place when you ask me to talk about them.
As much as they're your friends, the thing is, they are leaders in this area. And people really want to know.
Lakini umenikata kauli. I was just prefacing my remarks with the thought that they are my friends. And Moses Wetangula, we went to school with him. He was 1 year ahead of me at the University of Nairobi. Musalia Mudavadi, we went to school with him. He was 1 year behind me at the University of Nairobi. And in real life, our paths have continued intersecting, and they are my brothers also from Western Kenya. But they are lost. They are lost. They are my two lost brothers, and there isn't much that we in this region can do to help them. They are like precious things that we have lost. And although Jesus Christ said that we light the lamp and sweep the house in all corners looking for it, these ones are beyond redemption. They seem to have gone through a cesspit. And then things have gone also through the sewage system and ended up in the cesspit. It's asking us for too much to go and open up the cesspit to see whether we can find them and salvage them. You don't see them on the ground except when there is a funeral, and it must be a funeral of some notable, in their view, individual. Then they come barricaded by some people of less than average
I'm waiting for the word.
They arrive festooned by some individuals of less than average self-esteem who are willing to hire themselves out for truncheon wielding and for commotion at funerals, and you have seen that happening, and eventually they escort them back to their vehicles and they exit. That means that they are not comfortable in their skin, in the environment in which they were born, and among the peoples they were born and brought up. Otherwise, you see them around at political forums that have been put together for them by Dr. William Ruto, and increasingly today by Mr. Farouk Kibet. But it is Mr. Farouk Kibet who has got the sophistication, the clout to assemble these people at a political meeting in their own backyard. And even when he does that, he calls them to come and dance. He tells them, dance. Show your dancing skills. This one dances and goes. The next one,
please come here.
Figure here, dance and go. It's not just showing their dancing skills. It is saying that they are now dancing to the tune that has been called by he who pays the piper. Wanacheza ngoma ya William. Mzee mmoja alikuwa akisema kwamba mimi nilikuwa nikicheza ngoma ya Kenyatta, wengine watacheza ngoma yangu. Sasa wanacheza ngoma ya Dr. Ruto.
In our previous interview, mtu alisema, kwani huyu jamaa anaongea Kiswahili? Yaani watu wamekuzoea sana kwa Kiingereza. Watu hawaamini kama unaongelea Kiswahili.
Kiswahili kusema ukweli kunitatiza. Kila ninapojaribu kuongea Kiswahili mimi hutatizika. Lakini Kiingereza nacho hunitatiza zaidi.
Really?
Kweli.
Oh my God! Do you think that Rigathi Gachagua will be a good president in this country someday?
Rigathi Gachagua is a good man who has been cut from the same cloth as William Ruto. Enough said.
When will be a presidential candidate preferred presidential candidates to 2027? Because now it's been like Ruto has to go all the time.
I don't want to campaign for another.
Okay. No,
I'm campaigning for nobody. What we know is who cannot be president now.
Okay.
Dr. Ruto has been put there. So he's been placed on the weighing scales. He has lost it.
So you will not be having a presidential
as DNA, we will continue looking around, and we probably will find somebody who is astute, and it's probably going to be a brand new person who has never run for office, because I think that is what this country requires. It's not even going to be me, because I have no intention to run for political office. When I was a young person,
now or ever,
they say don't say ever, but let me say I'm not going to run for office. When I was a young person, I attempted to run for office in Usera, and it had its own dynamics. They would announce BARRACK as one, then the following day they announce someone else. They say it was a mistake, but I lost the appetite to run for office. I am now a political thinker who helps my country to think. I'm the Secretary General of DNA. I'm helping them to think and to be relevant, and they have to think. They should not try to be like the rest of the shopping baskets that have disguised themselves as political parties. They should open up that space, especially for younger people. And if a young man or a young woman whom the country is able to believe in shows up, and if we have 10 of them aspiring to be president, we will take them through the democratic process. And with me as SG, there will be fairness, and one of them will become a presidential candidate, another one will become a running mate, and we would provide a slate of other candidates. It may be called wishful thinking, but it must start somewhere with wishes. Then after they have formed a government, I would retreat to this home and listen to these birds here. Don't you think this is a good place to go sit and relax and stretch your legs and wait for uji wa wimbi wakuletee hapa, na nyakati za jioni uletewe chai unywe, na kisha utembee humu mitaani, viungani, ukisalamia jamaa na marafiki, na hayo ni maisha mazuri tu. Kwa hivyo mimi kazi yangu ni kujaribu kusaidia wale wanao nuia, lakini waje wakijua kwamba tutawachuja. Kisha tuweke pale mtu ambaye anastahili kuwekwa hapa, awe dada, awe mwana, bora amefikisha matakwa yale yanayostahili apewe hiyo nafasi. Na kisha tutamfanyia kampeni kupitia vyombo na majukwaa tofauti tofauti, na Wakenya wakikataa si mshauri yao. Wataendelea kulalamika tu na kulia na kununa na kutuhumu na kushutumu, tutakuwa tunawapa nafasi.
Kitu la kwanza ni kwamba mambo ya media hayako chini yake. Kuna vile media kweli au vyombo vya habari vinaweza kuhusika na masuala ya usalama, lakini lazima apitie kwa ngazi zinazostahili. Na vyombo vya habari huwa ni vyombo vya kuweza kuonyesha ukweli wa mambo jinsi yanavyojiri na kujitokeleza katika taifa. Na serikali yao yote ile inayotaka kuvifungia vyombo vya habari huwa ni serikali ambayo imeshaanza kushindwa na majukumu yake na haitaki tena kwamba vitu kama hivyo viweze kujulikana. Kuna kitu ambacho wanajaribu kuficha, na umeona kwamba kuna jamaa ambao wameweza kudhulumiwa mtaani, wengine wamepigwa risasi na wakawa wanachukuliwa wakati huo. Lakini hata hivyo ni kwamba viongozi wa aina hiyo hawaelewi ukweli wa mambo ambapo umeweza kufikia kiteknolojia, kwa sababu kuna sasa teknolojia ya kidijitali, na wananchi raia wenyewe kila mahali wanakusanya habari, na wakati mwingi wanazipeperusha tu mambo yanapokuwa yanatokea. Hivyo basi itabidi atunyang'anye sisi sote simu zetu za rununu, aweze kuzitupa katika shimo, sijui atalitoa wapi. Ni kiongozi ambaye tungeweza kufikiri kwamba akiwa kiongozi kijana anaweza kuwa anaelewa mambo ambapo yamefikia na masuala ya kijamii jinsi ambavyo hujiendeleza. Lakini hawa viongozi wote wa msimamo ya aina hiyo ni mawimbi yanayopita. Tumeweza kuwaona wengi tu katika nyakati zilizopita. Tuliweza kuwaona kina Johnston Makau ambaye alikuwa ni waziri wa habari na utangazaji katika nyakati zake, akiwa anavibadilisha vyombo vya habari. Tumeweza kuwaona akina Sharif Nasiri wakisema watu wapende wasipende. Tuliweza kuwaona akina Clement Bashanja, akina Kihika Kimani, akina David Mwenje, akina Josephat Njuguna Karanja, akina Elijah Mwangale, na hao wote walikuwa na wimbi yaliyopita. Na hata hili wimbi linaloitwa Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen pamoja na imla zake watapita tu. Ni mtu ambaye anaifanya kazi ya rais kuwa ni ngumu zaidi. Hata wakati ambapo ametuambia kwamba watu watapigwa risasi, na akasema kwamba sizo bwana zake tu, kwamba ni amri kutoka juu. Juu alimaanisha juu ya waziri, na yule aliye juu ya waziri ni mmoja tu ambaye ni rais. Hata anapomaanisha kwamba ni rais amemwambia aje atoe hayo matamko, ni mtu asimfaa rais hata kidogo, kwa sababu wakati anapochukua kiapo chake cha ofisi huwa anasema kwamba anaapa ya kwamba atamshauri rais kwa ukweli, na inabidi kwamba wakati kama huo ukiwadia amshauri rais na kuambia kwamba rais, haya hayatakufaa, hayatakusaidia. Na rais William Ruto ajue kwamba kila siku ambayo inapita Kipchumba Murkomen akiwa waziri wake wa masuala ya usalama, masuala ya ndani ya nchi, kila siku inayopita anamkaribisha sana na kuporomoka. Itamfaa iwapo atatafuta mtu ambaye amekomaa, mweledi wa mambo ya uongozi na usalama, amkite katika huo wadhifa.
Back in the local government, I took independence. Tell them this is nothing harsh for them today.
Sasa Wakenya naambia kwamba kuna ndoto au kuna ruwaza ambayo ilibuniwa na waanzilishi wa jamhuri yetu, wakiwa wanafikiria jamhuri ambayo inamheshimu na kumwabudu Mwenyezi Mungu, wakiwa wanategemea kwamba kutakuwa taifa ambalo kwa sababu kubwa limebarikiwa na Mwenyezi Mungu. Itakuwa ni taifa ambalo haki ni ngao na mlinzi, ni taifa ambalo tunapata mengi, mazao mengi kutokana na juhudi zetu kazini, na kwamba ni taifa ambalo kila mmoja anajivunia. Na hiyo ruwaza tusikate tamaa, tutakuja kuipata wakati mmoja, lakini inatutegemea kila mmoja wetu. Ikiwa tutazama katika
dimbwi na kasumba za kikabila havitatufaa na hatutavipata. Tukumbuke kwamba yule gwiji tunayemtetea eti kwa sababu ni kabila letu, ana tumbo lake yeye na wake wa ndani, na vile wanavyonufaika navyo kwa njia za uporaji wa wazi wazi, uporaji wa chini kwa chini, uporaji kimamboleo, uporaji kupitia mitandao ya kidijitali, anapora yeye kwa manufaa yake mwenyewe na kwa familia yake. Kwa hivyo tusije tukapumbazwa, tukakubali kufanya mbumbumbu na watu walio safihi, wakosefu wa maadili na rai, na kwamba kila tuamkapo, kila tunapokesha, tufikirie taswira tofauti ya taifa letu ambayo tunategemea kwamba tutaweza kupata wakati mmoja, na kwamba usimtegemee mwingine kwa yeye ndiye atakayeleta hayo mabadiliko, bali ni wewe. Kila mmoja wetu lazima awe badiliko ambayo analitegemea kwamba angependa kuliona. Asante.
Okay, asante sana Barack kwa muda wako. Kutoka kwangu mimi sina la ziada. Naitwa Violet.